In this session, we are joined by Ms. Dites. Pai Dites is the Silent and Myanmar Campaign's Director for International Rivers, a global NGO working to defend the rights of rivers and communities for 16 years. Pai has actively worked to protect Southeast Asia's major rivers, the Mekong and Salween. A pioneer in her work with Thai and Burmese ethnic grassroots organizations, she organizes river communities to slow down dam projects along the Salween River that threaten the local ecosystem and the livelihoods of those who depend on the river and its resources. Ms. Dites forms community action groups to push for long-term policy and legislation that includes the participation in risk analysis of development projects. Thank you, Pai, for joining us today. We are so glad to have you on our panel. My first question to you would be, could you tell us a little bit more about the connection of the Karen people to nature and its relevance for them, the traditional laws which are there and how they connect to the area? How does cow and other elements of culture relate to their connection with nature and land?
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see all of you here in this session. To the question, I would say that from my experience working with the Karen ethnic communities or indigenous people in the Salween Basin, I would say that they've been living, they believe that their ancestors live in the Salween Basin for more than 1,000 years. But because of the simple kind of way of life that they don't really have construction or cities or big towns, so that they live only in the forest. I would say that they are the current indigenous people of the Salween Basin. They are purely forest dweller. They are the one who live in the forest. They farm in the forest, in the jungle, in harmony with nature, and they do not destroy the forest at all. So there is very little evidence to show that they actually live there for more than 1,000 years. But everywhere we go, we can see that abundant large forest, particularly the teak forest in the Salween Basin, being protected very well by the local communities of the Karen ethnic. And from my experience working with them, taking the field work, interviewing them and spending time with women groups, students, youth, and elders, my experience is that the way of life and the belief of the current indigenous people living in the Salween and along Thai Burmese border, they very much respect the forest and the Mother Earth, the nature. They feel that actually it's them that belong to the forest. Actually, it's their livelihoods that belong to the earth. So everything they do has been very much in respect to the Mother Earth and Mother Nature. For example, when they do the rotational agricultural farming, before they cut the woods, they would pray and inform the Mother Earth that they are going to start the cultivation. They're going to start cutting some of the woods to make the place for them to grow their rice and other crops. So this kind of ritual been going on for the whole year. So most of that time they very much attached to the river, and as well as to respect the Salween River as well as other tributaries.
That is so interesting, and that is also similar to some of the practices we have in this region. My second question to you would be that the saying, land does not belong to people, people belong to the land, seems to be true in the case of the Salween Peace Park. Could you tell us a little bit more about the way that the Karen people interpret this and how it is enacted in their connection with nature? How do people envision their own well-being within these aspects?
I think the majority of population of the world this day, they might define the word of the well-being as a prosperity or richness or lots of material, lots of good phones, good internet, or good housing and travels. But from my experience spending with my colleagues and my comrade with the current indigenous people in the Salween Basin, I would say that for them, what they really see as well-being or precious thing for them is actually peace to live with nature, particularly in the eastern part of Myanmar when there's been under the ongoing conflicts for many decades, particularly this year after the coup in Myanmar that people were power and democracy were taken by the military junta. So what is very luxurious for them is actually peace. They want peace. So they want freedom to be able to practice their indigenous way of livelihoods, to be with the land that they belong to. For the past 20 years, there has been attempt by hydropower industry together with government officials and some government authorities in Thailand, China, and in Myanmar to develop large hydropower dams along the Salawin River on the mainstream. And at least 3 of them were planned to be built on the current state of Myanmar. So that's how people got together and discuss and say that they need to use their own wisdom, local wisdom, to protect the land and protect the forest from armed conflict, as well as from destructive hydropower construction. To my understanding, this is how they formed and how they declared Salawin Peace Park in this on the bank of the Salawin River in current state. What is interesting to me for the Salawin Peace Park, the way that it's announced and declared and organized purely by indigenous communities in the current state, is that it's very democratic. The way that it's formed, the way that it's discussed and decided is very democratic way, because there is active involvement and active participation from women, from farmers, from fishers, from current soldiers, teachers, students. So everybody taking part of the discussion. They discuss how to declare the Salawin Peace Park, who can use the forest, what are there in the forest, how many wildlife, how many of them are endangered, why the free-flowing river is important for them, and how harmful the armed conflict as well as the destructive dams project would be to their livelihoods and their future. And they want to see the future that they can live on their ancestral land in peace.
The Salawin Peace Park really sounds very inspirational in those terms, the way it has come up and the way it continues. So moving on, the third question which I wanted to ask you is, what are the aspirations of the community for the future in terms of the park, their land, and the river? Going forth, how does the community envision development for the regions?
As the area has been under ongoing armed conflict for many decades, I think what people there envision is to see the future of their land, the future of their next generation that live in peaceful way. There is no more militarization by Burmese army. There is no more planned destructive dams project on the Salawin River, and the way that they can see the forest managed and used with local wisdom of the current indigenous people. I think that's the thing they're looking forward to see. And during the airstrike in April and May, when the Burmese military sent air force to attack military along the border, as well as in some villages, more than 70,000 current indigenous people were instantly displaced. They have to seek refuge in the forest. Some of them have to cross the Salawin River to be temporarily refugee on Thai soil to save their own life. Later on, they were forced to go back to their home, even though they cannot go back to home because they fear, because of the people still hearing the voice of the drone and the airplane. They fear that there will be more airstrike by Burmese military again. So what is important for them is the forest. Actually, they can live in the forest and seek refuge, and being temporarily internally displaced person can be very difficult. But because of the abundant forest that they protected, for them it's like meaning death or life, meaning that how they can find food, how they can find woods, mushroom, edible plants, just to surviving while they are sick. They are hiding from the militarization, from the armed conflict in eastern Myanmar. So for me, the appreciation for me to the Salawin Peace Park is that the way that people are not leaving their homeland, they want to be there and they want to protect their land, and they feel the sense of the belonging, that they are the one that belong. They are children of the forest and they are children of the rivers. So their deed is to protect this land and to protect this river. Even though I think that in the modern day, you can see them as a poor villagers that have less or even no income at all, but they can still live peacefully with their land and their forest. And the important is the self-esteem, that they feel that they are the one who live here. rather than moving them to cities, to relocation sites, and just give them food, give them a donation. That's not the way that they want. They want to be there with dignity and the pride of be the guardian of the forest and the guardian of the rivers.
Thank you, Pai. Yes, what you're speaking about is something that I think the audience in the Northeast can also relate to, because we have a lot of communities which have this similar feeling towards the forest. And thank you so much for joining us, Pai, and thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing. And thank you for being part of our session. Thank you.
Okay, great. Looking forward to the forum.
Yes, and we're looking
Good
forward to
luck.
engaging with you
Bye.
more. Bye.